Great. Good morning, everybody. I thought I would share with you what I know and also a little bit about what I think I know about cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin in the main. It is actually not such a new thing. I mean, in a manner of speaking, you could say that the Knights Templars actually developed and used cryptocurrencies because if I were in France and I needed to get some money to somewhere in Jerusalem, I could take a little script and they would take it down there. That little piece of paper, which the Knights Templars would take to Jerusalem, would then be given to me and I could retrieve money from their treasury in Jerusalem. So that, I mean, this is not a new idea, is what I'm trying to convey. Alicia talked a little bit about the fact that it is new enough that the government, our government, is still trying to figure out what it is and how to tax it. And what they have determined so far is that Bitcoin is not a currency, speaking about Bitcoin in particular. Rather, it is an asset. And therefore, you treat it as you would any other asset, and you are going to be taxed on any gain in the value of that asset, what's called capital gains. And for God's sakes, hold it at least 2 years so that you can enjoy long-term capital gains, which for many of us would be a zero tax. Short-term capital gains is going to hit you at exactly the same rate as your ordinary income tax rate. So that's all I'm going to say about on the heels of what Alicia had to talk about taxation, what the government considers it to be. So there are several types of cryptocurrencies, if you will, or tokens that are considered to be cryptocurrency. And a token is merely a piece of code that's stored someplace. You'll see it represented as a gold coin or BC or something. There is no physical Bitcoin or any kind of physical cryptocurrency coin. They are come in a lot of different flavors. There are ones called stable coins. These are coins that are pegged to the US dollar or a franc or a euro or whatever currency they might choose to be pegged to. The theory is that one of these will always be equal in purchasing power to $1. In this environment, that's a terrible deal since the purchasing power of your dollar is going down by about 9% a year. And the other thing is there really are no guarantees on that, just like money market funds. You know, your dollar in a money market fund was always thought to be redeemable for $1, but there was a time when they broke the buck, was the name, the term that was applied to it, where that dollar was not actually worth $1 worth of that money market fund because the value of the assets in the money market fund had declined. So no guarantees in that. Then there's the advent of something called central bank digital currencies. And that's what China has already done. And where we appear to be headed as a country, the Treasury Department likes the idea a whole lot. And basically, those digital dollars will still be dollars and will still be considered to be currency and be acceptable for any transaction in the United States, just as it is in China, except you won't carry them in your wallet and you won't carry them in your bank. You'll carry them in a digital wallet, which will be your phone for most people. So in China, for instance, the way that works is nobody carries cash. Most merchants are set up to accept cash. If you want to buy something, you have to have your phone and you have to have the digital renminbi on your phone, and you just transfer it to the merchant electronically. It doesn't go through a bank, doesn't go through a credit card processing system. They're moving towards that here in the United States. This will not be Bitcoin. This will be a central bank digital currency, which means they don't even have to print more dollars. All I got to do is move a couple of digits and we get another $1 trillion in circulation. You know, so I'm not a big advocate of that.
No, me neither.
Then you have more coins that are more crypto. So you have, most famous, of course, is Bitcoin. It was really the first. And then you have things like Dogecoin, which were basically a joke when they started, but made millionaires out of some people nonetheless. And then you have coins for which secrecy and privacy are the key to their appeal, and it would be like Monero. And a lot of money laundering things happen in the Monero domain. But it's completely legit. It's not illegal to own Monero, nor is it illegal to transact business in Monero. What's illegal is when you transact illegal business in Monero. You buy drugs, you guns, or sell them. And then you have other Bitcoins like Ethereum, which were the invention of a guy named Vikram Butrin. And he realized that the same technology that underlies all of these cryptocurrencies, something called the blockchain, which I'll address momentarily, can also be used to create a distributed ledger, and we'll come back to that in just a minute, for contracts. So if, for instance, Kate wanted to sell me her lovely villa in South Boulder, we could do that in Ethereum using a smart contract, avoid title insurance, even, I could give her Bitcoin, she could give me the title to her house. That can all be done now, okay, using smart contracts. And that goes hand in glove with the next thing I want to talk about, which is the blockchain technology. The math that underlies it and the encryption technology that underlies it are beyond my understanding. But the way that it works is actually fairly easily understood. So if I wanted to send Kate some Bitcoin, not dollars, some Bitcoin, let's say, and Bitcoin, by the way, is divisible down to like five digits to the right of the decimal place. So it's not like a dollar. We have a penny is 1/100th of a dollar. With Bitcoin, you can have a 10,000th of a Bitcoin, because a Bitcoin today is worth about $42,000. So if I want to send Kate 20 cents, I can do it using Bitcoin. Or if I want to send her 2 Bitcoin, $80,000, I can do that too. So the blockchain is the mechanism by which that happens. I put into my account an address to which I wish to send that money. I get that address from Kate. Kate says, send me, this all goes over the internet, sends me the address and says, send me this amount. I authorize that. The money goes through over the internet to Kate. The transaction is verified, really. That's the purpose of the blockchain and all this encryption is verified. First of all, that I own that Bitcoin that I'm about to transfer. The information about my ownership of that Bitcoin is stored on what's called a distributed ledger. So the entire blockchain of every transaction that's ever happened using Bitcoin is stored on millions of computers everywhere, all over the world simultaneously. If one goes down, the others survive. So even if China, for instance, makes it illegal to own Bitcoin, nobody else in the world cares. And in fact, the Chinese people own Bitcoin. They carry it around on thumb drives. And so first of all, there's proof of ownership, which develops trust, right? Okay, Jim owns that Bitcoin, you can transfer it. Here it's been verified, and this is a process that happens, the verification process, by at least 5 or maybe 7 different nodes on that distributed network. So yep, it's his Bitcoin money transfer. Now we have a block that's been created that says Kate owns those Bitcoin and I own fewer Bitcoin, and that's everywhere distributed. So the underlying premise of Bitcoin really is, first of all, it's a verifiable transaction. Trust is established because it is verified, more trust than would really be, you can counterfeit dollars. You trust every $100 bill you see, I don't. And there's no one central repository of the data that underlies that reports all these transactions. They call it a distributed ledger. A ledger is an accounting manner of keeping the books, if you will. That's what a ledger means. Debits and credits, like the checkbook. And then it's, I think I said it's verifiable, and if you own it, you can transfer it, you can do whatever you want. Bitcoin, however, is not something that is useful yet as a currency, because it takes from a few seconds to a few minutes for one transaction to occur, and that's because this block is being built and verified. Okay. If we think about our normal world where we use Visa or we write a check, that is a layer on the basic pile of cash that you have, which you now deposit in a bank. So there's one layer. You write a check, there's another layer. Or you use your debit card, there's another layer. Or you use a credit card, and now the credit card, you owe the credit card company some money. Those are called layers. Bitcoin is the first layer. They're developing something called Lightning, which is a second layer, which will make it possible. It's actually already possible. It's being used in El Salvador as a currency now. It is, in fact, the national currency of El Salvador. It makes it possible to do transactions as quickly as you could using a Visa card. So things are continue to evolve to the point where, as more and more countries adopt the Lightning layer on top of Bitcoin, which is just another piece of technology, and then treat it as currency, and you'll see that happen in places that don't have the national currency, like Panama maybe might be next. Panama and El Salvador both use the dollar as their national currency, and kind of got tired of being taken to the woodshed every time they decided to print more of them, and therefore the dollars they own were worth less. So they've adopted Bitcoin for that reason. Right now, one of the great advantages is, if I wanted to buy myself a brand new Mercedes-Benz 450 AMG, and if Mercedes would take it, I could get that done without going through dealerships or any of that stuff. Just buy it directly from Mercedes, pick it up in minutes, and off I go. You know,
I like
or a house, yeah, or a house in Kenya, for instance, if I wanted a coffee plantation in Kenya. Now, a lot of people say, well, Bitcoin is unstable or it's bad for the environment. One has to realize that there's differences between Bitcoin and dollars. One of the differences between Bitcoin and dollars is that Bitcoin, there will never be more than 21 million Bitcoins. And it is that fixed and scarce quantity of supply that is one leg of the supply-demand equation that sets the price. But there's never going to be more than 21 million, and more people start using it and need to have it and want to buy it. What do you expect the price to do? You know, you would expect it to go up back to pass. You know, you could have bought your first Bitcoin for about a quarter. In fact, there's a famous story of a guy that used one Bitcoin to buy a pizza for $40,000 pizza. You know, but he got his Bitcoin he mined his Bitcoin. So there are two ways to get Bitcoin. You may mine it, which is where they talk about the environmental issues, or you can buy it. I mined some, and I have bought some. I've done both. Mining became an inefficient way for me to acquire Bitcoin because they made the hashing algorithm more difficult about once a quarter. And so the amount of computer power required to do that hash increased to the point that the cost of the electricity to run the computers wasn't more than the Bitcoin I was able to mine. So there are now Bitcoin mining farms in places like Iceland where they use heat computers to heat buildings, and the electricity is practically free because it's geothermal, and so the people still mining Bitcoin. Big companies are mining Bitcoin. Names you would know were involved in that business. But once all the mining is done and all the 21 million Bitcoin have been mined, there won't be any more to mine. Those same facilities will still be used to verify the transactions that I spoke about earlier. And they get a fee for that verification process, very small fee. Now, what about security? what is, can somebody break in the middle of the night and steal your Bitcoin? If you had it on an exchange, which is where most people keep their Bitcoin, an exchange like Coinbase or Binance, or there are dozens of big exchanges where you can trade Bitcoin. Robinhood, another one. That's a possibility. In fact, it has happened. There was a recent hack. A young Russian couple living in California stole $557 million of Bitcoin off one of the exchanges. And that's more than I make in bed. So I'm just telling you. I'm not for that. So, so the other alternative is you can keep it in your wallet, right? And there are two types of wallets. You can say your cell phone is one wallet because you can have an account on your cell phone and you can just send Bitcoin from your cell phone and receive it, right? But your cell phone is still connected to the internet. So, well, it's connected to the internet, maybe through your cellular data network. So it's still exposed. The other way you can keep that's called a hot wallet. The other way you can keep it is on something called a cold wallet. And they have those gadgets that they sell, but basically you can just use a thumb drive. And you can use, there are any number of programs that you can use that create the application on your thumb drive and then allow you to put straight from your wallet to another wallet. So if I wanted, in the case of sending Kate some more money, because she's just always wanting more money.
More, give me more.
Yeah, I would stick my thumb drive into my computer, do that transaction, take it out. I would only be exposed to theft or hacking in the few seconds it takes me to get there. So I'm going to stop there because I probably will run the time I had a lot of anyhow, and just see if anybody has any questions, corrections, or is still awake.
I have a question about the electricity use. I
Yeah.
saw in Fortune magazine that Bitcoin right now uses 7 times as much electricity as all of Google's operations across the world. And this other magazine says that every Bitcoin transaction, even buying a latte, consumes over $100 in electricity. I don't know if these reports are true, but I know it takes an awful lot of electricity. And how does it get paid for?
Well, so what's happening in that arena, and talk about this kind of the green aspect of whether or not Bitcoin's green or not, is that many of these Bitcoin mining firms are actually starting up reviving older power plants, hydro power plants, for instance, and things like that. And they own these power plants, and their excess power goes into the grid. So it's actually additive to the power that we have, which in many cases is actually solar or I guess you'd consider hydro to be part of that.
Renewable.
Generic term for that.
Renewable?
Yeah, renewable energy. It
Yeah.
would be added to the renewable energy supplies in the United States. And as I added in Iceland and other places, just like they have cogeneration facilities where they run a diesel motor to provide power for a particular operation and then take heat from the water jet of that motor to run through pipes and create heat in the building and cogeneration. So the same sorts of things are happening with Bitcoin miners. Now, for me to do what I just described to Kate, it would be an incalculably small amount of electricity because the transaction itself takes heartbeats. You know, it's not there's a big computer sitting there humming away, you know, for hours at a time trying to do this. So if anything, I think that Bitcoin has a salvific potential for energy supplies in the United States. I have a client who's in the business of working with utilities to help them manage this constantly changing environment for the demand for their energy production. So do they shut this plant down? Do they bring this plant up? And what they have discovered is the Bitcoin miners are very helpful to them in balancing that load. So if they need more demand, rather than fire up another gas-fired turbine or something like that, or worse yet, coal-fired power plant, they just have to ask the Bitcoin miners to turn it down for a little bit, and they help with that. So I'm not convinced that Bitcoin is the end of the universe with respect to the collapse of our ecosystem.
But it
or the
doesn't
death-
help.
Or the death of Mother Earth, you know. It's like many things, it's important to understand the good and the bad, but have a well-researched, well-considered understanding of good and bad before you decide to involve yourself in it. And there is a lot of risk. My Bitcoin investments have done very well. And would I recommend them to my grandmother? No, you know. If it takes a dive, it might not recover before she expires. So it's like any asset, it's kind of a casino. But you could say the same thing about Tesla stock, for instance, or pick anything in the casino that is Wall Street. And if you put your money in a savings account, you're guaranteed to lose about 9% a year. So it's just not, you know, these are tough times and people need to inform themselves and make prudent decisions.
Excellent, very good. Okay, well, I'm going to end here. Thanks, that was a great job, Jim. I learned a lot.